Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and I talk a lot about Salesforce. Today I'm continuing on with my series of doing mini courses for the different Salesforce certifications. You guys really seem to like these, and I have had the Platform App Builder mini course widely requested. So I'm happy to bring you this mini course. And one thing is that we do have an app builder course on Salesforce Upscale, but it is going to be revamped this year, hopefully. It is not quite at the level that we want it to be, so we will be adding better videos, better quality, more in-depth videos, more practice exams, a glossary as well as practice examples and challenges within that. So keep an eye out for that course to be updated on salesforceupscale.com. So let's talk about the Platform App Builder exam in general. Actually, let's go through a rundown of what we're going to be covering. These are the topics that when I took the App Builder exam were super crucial for me to understand, and that a lot of people misunderstand when they are taking the exam. And really, these things helped push me over the line of not passing to passing eventually this App Builder exam. So we're going to cover the exam guide, what's covered in the exam, all about the exam, and then we're going to talk about the app exchange. We're going to talk about different relationships that you can have between the different objects. We're going to talk about custom report types, talk about using roll-up summary fields, modifying a lightning page in the app builder, and then we're going to talk about sandboxes. So that's a lot to cover, but let's go ahead and jump into this exam guide. So there's not currently a prerequisite for this exam. It's going to be 60 multiple choice, multiple select questions with 5 possible non-scored questions. Personally, it's about 50-50 if I get those 5 non-scored questions or not. But my husband, Jeremy, who's taken a lot more Salesforce exams than I have, has always had those 5 non-scored questions. The time allotted is going to be 1 hour and 45 minutes. Passing score is around 63%. Registration fee is $200 plus taxes. Retake is $100 plus taxes. I will try and link where I like to look for exam coupon codes down below in the description that can help out with the financial burden. You can take this online or at a proctoring center. No hard copy online materials, no prerequisites here. If I were to compare the App Builder exam to the admin exam, it's kind of like the admin exam. However, the App Builder exam focuses more in depth on certain aspects that are covered in the admin exam and doesn't cover other aspects. So you'll be tested on a lot of the different limitations when it comes to things like objects, object relationships, security within Salesforce is a big one as well, and not so much on general admin and more about building stuff within Salesforce. This is also a prerequisite for some of the developer and architect exams, so it kind of gets your feet wet into that world as well. All right, now Salesforce does have instructor-led training, and if your employer is going to pay for it, then I think these are great. But personally, if you are just wanting to take it and you'll be paying for it out of pocket, I think there are a lot better resources online for you to take that are a lot less of a financial burden than these exams or these exam courses. Okay, let's talk about the exam outline. So the first thing you're going to see is Salesforce fundamentals. So the differences and where the boundary is between programmatic, so clicks versus code. And this is going to deal a lot with, hey, what can you do with flows? And when would it cause for you to need to go beyond flows and have a developer come in and build something? Then you're going to talk about the app exchange, different access and capabilities. They're going to give you a scenario, and then you will determine the appropriate sharing solution. So if that's manual sharing, if that is sharing rules, however that be. You'll talk about global and object-specific layouts. You'll describe a little bit about Chatter, but not too much on Chatter, maybe 1 or 2 questions. All right, and that's at 23%, so a fairly large portion of that. And that's a lot of what you'll also see on the admin exam is covered in the Salesforce fundamentals. Then you're going to go to data modeling and management. They're going to give you a scenario, and then you'll describe the appropriate data model, if you're going to use a lookup field, if you're going to use a master detail field, if you're going to need to use a junction object. That's also a possible scenario. And then you're going to talk about the different relationships, how it impacts the different access, user interface, and reporting. Then you're going to talk about what happens when you change a field or a data type. Given the scenarios, consider the schema builder versus using the object manager and when you'd want to use one versus the other. Then you're going to talk about the different ways that you can export data and take data out of Salesforce, as well as how to import data into Salesforce. A lot of this focuses on the differences between using the data import wizard versus the data loader versus a third-party tool, and what sizes of data you're going to need to use for which tool. All right, and that's at 22%. And then you're going to talk about business logic and process automation. So this is a lot of formula fields, roll-up summary fields, validation rules, approval processes, workflow, flow, and process builder, which if you're viewing this way in the future, then they might have updated this exam to not include workflows or process builders because those are being currently phased out and mostly focusing on the flow. One thing I will say about this, if they are still on the exam, you're going to want to go with the most simple answer. So let's say if they said we want field A to be updated to this when field B is updated as well, then that would likely be a workflow because you are able to do field updates with that. And that while you could do that with a process builder and flow, the workflow is the most simple answer. And then given a set of requirements, you're going to recommend a solution to automate a business process and what tools you'd use as well there. All right, that's at 28%, and that's going to be your biggest section. Then user interface at 17, different customizations, as well as for the web-based version or your browser-based version of Salesforce, and in the mobile app of Salesforce. So what things can you customize on the mobile app, and then talk about different declarative options for customizing, and then maybe talk about where the line is between programmatic and declarative clicks versus code. And that's at 17%. And then you have app deployment. So we're going to talk about sandboxes, when to use sandboxes, what different scenarios would you use for using change sets, which help you move things from a lower sandbox to a further sandbox. Given the use cases, determine unmanaged packages versus managed packages, and select an appropriate deployment plan. And that's at 10%. So that's the smallest section. Again, follow the exam code of conduct. Don't give out answers. And yeah, just don't cheat. Just be good. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move into our first topic here. And that is going to be the App Exchange. So to get to the App Exchange, you go to the 3x3 up here, view all, and then visit App Exchange up here in that little pop-up. All right, so there's 3 different parts to the App Exchange. You're going to have apps, components, and you're going to have consultants. So let's start with consultants. This is just a recommendation of different companies that Salesforce has worked with and has vetted that, hey, these guys have certified professionals to help you in your company set up Salesforce or bring on a new functionality into your org. So that's pretty much it for consultants. And then there are components. This is going to be things like possibly bringing in a box for DocuSign onto your opportunity page layout where you can have it connect to your DocuSign account and send out a contract from the opportunity page with the fields that you have laid out. That's kind of an example of a component. And then we have apps, which are going to be bigger than components. And these are going to be bigger items within your Salesforce org. So currently there's Congo Composer, which helps you do more robust contracts and different documents, as well as you can bring in different packages from different companies. You can see we have Salesforce adoption dashboards, which helps you bring in a bunch of reporting tools about adoption. But essentially, these are possibly different, bigger pieces of functionality that have already been developed and you can bring into your org, like a project management system, or maybe you want to have experiences laid out, but you just need a quick solution. Oftentimes, these questions might be something along the lines of, hey, given these restraints on your time, on your budget, would it be better for you to use an App Exchange app, or would it be better for you to use your current resources that you have at your company? But yeah, that is kind of it when it comes to the App Exchange on that exam. All right, so now let's transition over to the schema builder. All right, so the schema builder is really, really awesome. You can find it in the setup, the backend, or the admin backend of Salesforce. And it helps you to see different relationships and create different relationships. Now, there are two main relationships. These are going to be master detail relationships, and these are going to be lookup relationships. And there are different reasons why you'd want to use these, and we'll get into those. There's also going to be something called a junction object, which uses two master detail relationships to create a many-to-many relationship, which wouldn't typically exist. All right, let's go to the schema builder. The schema builder is really awesome if you are needing to create a lot of different objects. They're great for using and creating junction objects. You can see how the different objects are related. You can see in the legend we have required fields, so anything with a red bar next to it is going to be required. Then the master detail relationship is going to be characterized by a red line, and the lookup relationship is going to be characterized by a blue line. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the differences between a lookup relationship and a master detail relationship. Now, personally, I found this distinction to be really, really important when taking the app builder exam. So, a lookup relationship is typically used when you need a loose relationship between two objects. So you don't necessarily need for there to be, let's say you had an A object and a B object, they are loosely related. So like you want to show that there might be a relationship between them, and maybe link the two records if there is a relationship, but there doesn't have to be one. The lookup relationship is not going to be a required field where it is on the master detail. A standard object can be the detail or the child side of the master detail relationship when the custom is the parent or is going to be the the upper of the two objects. Default record ownership is not going to be controlled by the parent. So let's go back to that AB example. Typically in a master detail relationship, the A object, if it was public read-write, then typically in the master detail relationship, the B object would also be public read-write. But in the lookup relationship, that doesn't have to be the same for each other. So you can have one be private and the other be public. And you can have a lot more lookup relationships than on either object. So you can have a maximum of 40 lookup relationships on each object, whereas on the master detail, you can only have 2. And then, okay, let's quickly run down master detail. And I highly recommend that you go to some resource that kind of goes into depth of the differences between these two because they are pretty important. Just so then you can study them and kind of memorize them for the exam. Master detail relationship is a lot more closely aligned. So we'll go back to A object and B object. These two, you have to have an A record when you have a B record. And then for this, you can have more than one B record to one A record. So let's say if we take an insurance example, we have the insured person as the A object, and then the B object is going to be insurance claims. So you can have one insured person or one insured group, and then you can have multiple claims for that person or group. Now, there has to be a person to claim it, so you have to have an A record for there to even be a B record. If there is a standard object in the master detail relationship, the standard has to be the parent object. So let's take another scenario of having a standard and a custom object together in a parent-child relationship. The standard has to be the parent or the master object, and then the custom has to be the child. It cannot be reversed. One last thing on the master detail before we keep going. You can only have a maximum of 2 master details on an object. All right, so now let's kind of get into creating these different relationships. I am going to clear all of these, and then I'm going to go over here to elements, and then we're going to create an object and talk a little bit more about these. So I'm going to drag an object, have this be A object. Okay, A objects. And it does start with a vowel. And the rest of these look good. All right, let's also create a B object. And it starts with a consonant. All the rest of these look good. Okay, so now we have these two different objects. Let's go ahead and create a lookup relationship for these. So when going through and doing a lookup relationship, or really any type of relationship, when you are either in the object manager or you are in the schema builder, you're going to want to start creating it on the object that you want to be the child object. So then you quote unquote look up to the parent object. And I'm using this interchangeably between the master detail and the lookup relationship, even though it's widely known that the master detail is going to be the parent child. So for this, I am going to drag the lookup relationship over to the child. And I'm going to have this be look up to a object. And then we're going to show which one this is related to. It's going to be the A object. And I am going to hit save. And now in the schema builder, you can tell which one is the child because it has the three little lines coming from it. That's both on the lookup and the master detail. And it's blue, so we know it is a lookup relationship. So certain scenarios that you might want to use a lookup relationship is oftentimes when you need to pull some information from a current object. Let's talk about the claims object that we had before. Oftentimes when you are on maybe a claim, then you will have an employee of the company who is their agent at this fake insurance company that we have. So you would take the claims object and have a lookup relationship up to an employee object to have be their agent, or maybe you have an agent object that lists all the agents and their different specialties within the insurance company. So that would be a way to kind of link those two objects and eventually those two records. So let's say we had Jim Bob, who was the insured person or the insured party, and Jane was going to be the agent. We could link those two records. We could link those two records together by having a lookup grab Jane from the agent, and then it would bring that over onto the page layout for the insured or the claimer object. And you would want this to be a looser relationship, so not have it be required that each insured group, party, person has an agent, because oftentimes agents change while you're reassigning agents, or have the claimant, the person, insured party, be kind of waiting for an agent to be assigned to them after they signed up online. That's also another scenario. That's kind of a general scenario of when you'd want to use the lookup relationship. All right, so now let's take this similar example. I'm going to create an object. I'm going to have this be C object. And save. Okay, so now we're going to have a master detail relationship between the C object and the B object. Again, how I kind of think of this in my mind is that you want to create it on the child object so then it looks up to the parent object. And that's something I actually used in my mind when I was on the exam of like, okay, so it looks up, it's going to be this is going to be the child. I am going to go drag the master detail relationship over to the C object, master detail to B object. All right, and then it's going to show a relationship to the B object. Okay, and then I choose the access and hit save. All right, and again, you can see here in the schema builder, it shows the master detail in red. You can tell which one is the child because it has the three prongs and it looks up to the B object. So let's take the example of the B object being the insured person, the insured party, and then the C object as the claims. So this is going to be a lot tighter of a relationship where you have to have an insured person to set a claim for this insurance policy. This is going to be one to many, whereas the lookup relationship is going to be typically one to one. So you can have many claims to the one insured party. One thing about a master detail relationship is that whenever you delete on the B object, if you were to delete a record, then all of the C records would also be deleted. as well. You can also create a roll-up summary field, which is something that we'll cover, but the roll-up summary essentially allows you to summarize any of the C object details on the B object. So let's say, again, taking this insurance claims, we could calculate the number of open claims using a roll-up summary field. So let's say we had 10 open claims for the one insured policy or one insured person party, then you'd be able to display that, hey, we have 10 of these open claims and show that on the insured record. So hopefully that didn't confuse you guys too much. We're going to jump into another type of relationship, and this is going to be a junction object relationship. So I'm going to go back to objects and clear all. So typically what you can't do using one relationship is create a many-to-many. So lookup relationship is a one-to-one. The master detail is a one-to-many, but it's really hard to create a many-to-many. And that's where the junction object comes in handy. So I am going to create 3 different objects. We're going to take an example of a project management system. We're going to have employees, we're going to have projects, and then we're going to have project tasks. So I am going to create these objects really quickly. Save. All right, and then we're going to have projects. Save. All right, I'm going to make this a little bit prettier. And then we're going to have project tasks. All right, and I might have messed up on a few of the fields, but that's okay, because this is just an example. Let's go ahead and move these around so then it makes a little bit more sense. All right, so we have currently in order how we're going to do this. We're going to have employees, we're going to have project tasks, and we're going to have projects. Because essentially what we want to do is we kind of want to bridge the gap between employees and projects and have this be employee or project tasks. So we have one employee that is going to be assigned to multiple project tasks, and you can have multiple project tasks assigned to one project. So this is kind of going to bridge the gap between employees and projects. So now how we're going to do this is we are going to have project tasks be the child of both employee and projects. So this allows us to assign one employee to multiple project tasks and then multiple project tasks to one project. So now that kind of sounds a little weird. Let's take this example. Currently, we are finishing our basement in our house, my husband and I, and we are going to be contracting out a company. So now there are a bunch of different employees for this company that are employed. You're going to have the framer, you're going to have a plumber, you're going to have an electrician, and they typically do whatever tasks are related to that specialty within that company, and that's going to be on multiple projects. So let's say we had houses 1, 2, and 3. Each of them need plumbing, each of them need electrical work, each of them need framing work. So what we can do is that we can have electrical, plumbing, framing for each house. So that's going to be house 1, 2, and 3. And then we can assign the project tasks for, let's say, for the plumber, we can assign plumbing for house 1, plumbing for house 2, plumbing for house 3 as a project task to the employee. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and create these relationships. So I'm going to do a master detail. We're going to put it on the child and it's going to look up to the master. So we're going to start it on the one that has more records typically, or the child object. So I'm going to have this be, I'm going to field label this employee. All right, and then we're going to have this go related to the employee object. All right, and it's going to be rewrite. I am going to click save. All right, so now that is going to look up to employee. So now we can assign employee to the different project tasks. So now let's do the same thing when we go over to projects. All right, so now I'm going to have this be projects. Just label it something familiar so then we know how this should be related. So now go to projects and hit save. All right, so now we have created that junction object, which is the junction object. It's going to be project tasks, and that bridges the gap between employee and projects. So hopefully that kind of roundabout explanation made sense. Let's go ahead and move on to the next thing, which is going to be custom report types. I'm going to close out of this. Let's go into the setup here. I'm going to type in report types. All right, so report types allow us to have one or many different objects that we can report on. So if you go over to reports right now, you would see standalone opportunities, you'd see standalone accounts, you'd see accounts and contacts, you'd see a bunch of different objects that you can report on. So these are report types. And they are often confused with report formats. Report types come first. It's going to be what objects you use. Report formats is going to be how that report looks after you have done all of your manipulation of your data. So I'm going to click continue and we're going to create a new custom report type. I am going to have this be opportunities, and products. All right, and then I'm going to have it stored in the Opportunities tab. And then you can choose the deployment status. So it's either in development or deployed. I'm going to select deployed because I am in a sandbox. And I know that no one else is using this, but if you are doing this in your regular org, then be sure to test all this out. I'm going to hit next. All right, and let's go ahead. So currently it shows that we're just showing all opportunities, and opportunities is our primary object. So let's go ahead and add another object. And it's nice that we can see kind of an example of what data we will see here as we change the different settings. So let's go ahead and add products here. Okay, so currently we have a relationship where on this report type, we need to have, for the records to show up, we need to have an A record or an object or opportunity record for every single product. So if we have an opportunity with no products, then this is not going to show up. If we have a product with no opportunities, that's not going to show up either. So it's only the intersection of the two of those that are going to show up. But now if we were to change the relationship where A records may or may not have any B records, then this would show us all of the opportunities that we have, regardless of whether or not they have a product assigned to them, which can be really, really helpful to see this. I am going to hit save here. And that's kind of report types. You might see some things based upon which report type to use if you want to see the opportunities with or without. If you want to see all A records, whether or not they have a B record, but only show the B records if they have an A record, or you're going to make the determination if the scenario calls for it that we'll see both of those together and they have to have both an opportunity and a product to show up on your report. And so oftentimes this will be a scenario where you will need to show both of these. All right, let's go ahead and move on to using roll-up summary fields. So roll-up summary fields, going back to our master detail and our junction object relationship. These have to be on a master detail relationship. So I am going to let's go to the employee object and set up a master detail. So again, employee is the master object to project tasks. So what we can do here is we can have a roll-up summary field that is going to count the number of project tasks that each employee is assigned to. So this can help us deal with utilization. All right, I am going to click a new field and I'm going to have it be a roll-up summary field. Hit next. I'm going to have this be number of project tasks. All right, hit next. And I'm going to have this count. Or we have to do summarized object project tasks. Here we go. And there are a few different things that you could do. So you could choose different fields to aggregate. So let's take the account opportunity object as an example. we could summarize the total number of revenue that each account is bringing in. And we could also do that based upon maybe open accounts or how much we've closed off of them by using filter criteria. But here I'm just going to do a simple count and use all the records in calculation. All right, and that's field level security and adding it to the page layout. And there we go. That's pretty simple. So now it is going to count the number of project tasks that we have for each employee. So let's say plumber in our example has tasks for plumbing home 1, home 2, and home 3. So it would show up as 3 different project tasks that plumber has. All right, now let's go ahead and go into an opportunity, and I want to talk about the Lightning app builder a little bit. So what we can do is we can kind of change how an opportunity looks. So there are a few different ways to do this. You can do this with the page layout, which deals with changing where the fields are, which fields are shown, which related lists are shown. And that's one way to do things. And then there's another way to do things, which is modifying the page. So I went to the gear icon, I selected page, and this is going to bring us to the canvas in the Lightning app builder to show us the different components that we have to work with and that we can add onto every opportunity page. So we have a few different ways that we can do this. We can add some of these different standard components that we have. And then there are also custom components and other components that you might bring in. Like a previous example, if we had a component for DocuSign, we would be able to drag and drop that here so then our salespeople can send off a quote with a couple of clicks. But what you can do here is you can also change the order of things. So personally, I like to see details before the activity, and then you can see activity and chatter there. You can also change these around. So if you wanted to see the related list over here, and you wanted to see the details and activity, you could switch that over here. And now you don't necessarily need to know all the ins and outs of using the Lightning app builder for changing up a Lightning page. You do need to know a few of the vocabulary that's associated with it, such as the canvas, which is going to be this background piece that you see that you're going to move all these different components around. Components are another piece that is going to be the different pieces that you can add. You may see the different types of components or standard components. Some really common ones are going to be accordion, action launcher, activities, chatter, launching a flow, different details, related lists, report charts, tabs. Just familiar, you don't need to memorize all of these, but familiarize with them. And if you wanted to go ahead and save this, we could go ahead and save and activate it. I'm going to assign it as org default. Hit next, save. And then let's go back. And all these different changes have been made. So the related was over here, but we kind of switched it over. And then we also have details over here that's in front of activity. Okay, finally, we're going to talk about sandboxes. So sandboxes are really important, especially in an enterprise environment. These help you to develop, these help you to make changes and kind of see how these changes are going to be accepted or how they are going to fit into your current copy or your current metadata changes within Salesforce. This is really important for testing, and there's different stages of the software development lifecycle. It's also known by different names. But this is really important so then you're not kind of messing things up or developing straight while people are working in the production environment. So there's 4 different types of sandboxes here. We have the developer sandbox, which is going to be your basic building, developing sandbox. And this is going to have all of the current changes or current customizations that you have in your production org, and it won't have any of the data. Then you also have a Developer Pro sandbox. This is going to have more storage for you to do more programmatic changes is what I've seen, or if you're doing like a lot of flows. this is also where you might need to use a Developer Pro sandbox. Then you have a partial copy sandbox, which is going to have all of the customizations that you have and then some of your data. And then you have a full copy sandbox, which is going to have all customizations and all data. So there's different reasons and phases of the software development lifecycle that you are going to use. Oftentimes you'll use change sets to promote different changes. So your developer and your Developer Pro are going to be fairly similar. Developer Pro just has a little bit more storage for different changes. Your developer is what you're going to be quote unquote developing in. And that's kind of the stage that it'll go in within the software development lifecycle. So now let's say you've developed it and you're ready for some further testing, particular maybe UAT testing or user acceptance testing. You're going to promote that to the partial copy sandbox where users can come in and test with some of the features that you have and try and break it, honestly. So that's kind of the partial copy and what it's used for. And then you're going to have a full copy sandbox, and oftentimes this full copy is going to allow you to do a test deployment of your features, your changes, your pieces, and see how it is going to deploy into your regular org, and you're going to try and break stuff so that it doesn't break the production environment. Yeah, that is kind of it for sandboxes and what they're used for, and a little bit of each different sandbox and what stage they match up to in the software development lifecycle. And that is going to bring us to the end of this mini course for the Platform App Builder exam. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to give it a like. If there are things that you'd like me to cover in future videos, be sure to put them down below in the comments, and I'll try and make those videos for you. You can check out our courses in the links down below in the description box or on salesforceupscale.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter at EmilyCallMBA. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.